Building upon our discussion of condominiums, townhouses, and planned unit developments, another distinctive form of property ownership found in Arizona is cooperative housing, commonly known as a co-op. Although less common than other forms of residential ownership, cooperative housing represents an important niche in the real estate market, particularly for buyers seeking affordability, community-based living, or senior housing options. Understanding how co-ops function and how they are regulated under Arizona law is essential for real estate professionals to competently advise clients and remain compliant with ARS Title 10 and the standards of practice established by the Arizona Department of Real Estate, ADRE. ARS Title 10 is Arizona's corporate law code. It governs how corporations and nonprofit entities, including many HOAs, are formed, run, regulated, and dissolved. A cooperative housing unit is fundamentally different from condominiums or townhouses in that the buyer does not purchase a real property in the traditional sense. Instead of holding a fee simple title to an individual unit, a buyer in a co-op purchases shares or membership interest in a legal entity, usually a corporation or trust, that owns the entire building or property. This ownership interest grants the buyer the right to occupy a specific unit through a long-term lease agreement, known as a proprietary lease. In essence, the co-op corporation owns the real estate, and the residents collectively own the corporation. For example, if a co-op in Tucson contains 40 residential units, each resident owns a proportional share of the cooperative entity and has an exclusive right to occupy one of the units. The corporation is responsible for property maintenance, taxes, insurance, and management, which are funded through monthly fees paid by each shareholder. This differs significantly from condominiums, where each owner holds title to their unit and pays separate property taxes. Key legal and financial characteristics. Co-op ownership creates a unique intersection of real estate, corporate, and securities law. Because residents do not hold individual title, transactions are governed by both ARS Title 10, Corporations and Associations, and ARS Title 33, Property, depending on the structure of the cooperative. The Arizona Department of Real Estate, ADRE, oversees the sale of co-op interests to ensure compliance with public reporting and disclosure laws, similar to those required for condominium and subdivision sales under Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 322181 ETCQ. Before any co-op shares can be sold, the developer or corporation must obtain a public report from the ADRE, which discloses essential details about ownership, management, and financial structure. This requirement protects consumers from misrepresentation or fraud and ensures that potential buyers understand their rights and responsibilities before investing. Failure to obtain a public report prior to selling shares is a violation of ARS Section 322183 and can result in disciplinary action, civil penalties, or even rescission of the sale. Financing a co-op differs from other residential transactions. Because buyers are purchasing shares rather than real property, traditional mortgage loans are not typically available. Instead, buyers may use share loans or personal loans secured by their ownership interest in the cooperative. This distinction can complicate the closing process and requires that agents clearly explain financing limitations to clients. Competent licensees should also ensure that buyers understand that defaulting on co-op dues or loan payments could result in the loss of both their shares and occupancy rights. Governance and regulation. Cooperative housing units are governed by a board of directors elected by the shareholders, similar to an HOA or condominium association. The board enforces bylaws, collects fees, and oversees property management. Monthly fees in co-ops often include expenses that individual homeowners would normally pay separately, such as property taxes, building insurance, water, and maintenance. This collective management system promotes affordability, but also means that members are mutually responsible for the financial health of the cooperative. If one member fails to pay dues, the financial burden can affect all residents. Arizona's Real Estate Timeshare and Membership Campgrounds Act, ARS, Section 32-2197 AT-CIQ, also provides additional oversight when cooperative membership involves rights to occupy units for extended periods, especially if the co-op structure resembles a membership-based property. In such cases, the commissioner may require registration, disclosure statements, and proof of financial stability before units are marketed to the public. Example in practice. Consider a client interested in buying a unit in a 55-plus co-op community in Sun City. A competent licensee would explain that instead of purchasing the unit outright, the buyer would purchase shares in the cooperative corporation. The agent must disclose that the buyer's rights are governed by corporate bylaws, not traditional deed restrictions, and that resale of the unit requires board approval. Additionally, because financing options may be limited, the agent might recommend consulting a lender experienced in co-op transactions or a real estate attorney to review the proprietary lease. This scenario underscores the fiduciary duty of reasonable skill and care under AACR 4-28-1101I, ensuring that clients are fully informed of the nature of their purchase and the legal implications of their ownership structure. Advantages and disadvantages. Co-op housing offers several advantages, including lower purchase prices, shared expenses, and a strong sense of community. However, disadvantages include limited financing options, potential resale restrictions, and collective liability for building maintenance and taxes. In some cases, co-ops restrict ownership based on criteria such as age or residency approval by the board, which, while legal under certain circumstances, must comply with federal and state fair housing laws to prevent discrimination. Review summary. Cooperative housing represents a distinct form of ownership where residents own shares in a corporation rather than individual real estate units. Buyers receive a proprietary lease that grants them the right to occupy a specific unit, while the cooperative corporation retains ownership of the property. These communities are regulated under ARS Titles 10, 32, and 33, and their sale requires ADRE oversight through the public report process. Competent licensees understand that co-ops operate under a collective financial model, have unique resale and financing structures, and require careful explanation to clients to ensure informed decision-making. Discussion prompts. How does co-op ownership differ from condominium ownership in terms of legal structure and financing? Answer. In a co-op, residents own shares in a corporation that owns the property, rather than a deed to their unit. Financing typically involves share loans rather than traditional mortgages. What disclosure requirement must be met before selling shares in a co-op? Answer. A public report must be issued by the Arizona Department of Real Estate under ARS, Section 32-2183, detailing ownership, management, and financial structure. What fiduciary duty applies when explaining co-op transactions to clients? Answer. The duty of reasonable skill and care under R4-28-1101I, requiring that agents ensure clients fully understand the ownership structure, financial responsibilities, and potential risks. Closing remarks. Cooperative housing is one of the most complex yet fascinating forms of property ownership in Arizona. It blends aspects of real estate, corporate management, and community living into a single ownership model that demands precision, transparency, and legal awareness from real estate professionals. A licensee who understands how co-ops are structured and regulated not only safeguards their clients, but also demonstrates the highest level of professional competency. By mastering this material, agents can confidently handle even the most intricate transactions while upholding Arizona's consumer protection standards.